welcome to Influence, the podcast that dives deep into the heart of influencer marketing and the creator economy with the people who know it best, the agents, creators, and marketers who operate behind the scenes. This podcast is hosted by Powder, where streamers can search their best moments to find short, shareable stream clips with AI. And I'm your host, Alyssa Goldberg. Today we have with us Camille Martinache, co-founder of Black Soup, a gaming influencer agency which helps brands develop their influencer marketing strategies and connects them with the right influencers to execute big campaigns. Camille is based in Berlin, and Black Soup has already completed campaigns for Riot, Epic, Focus Entertainment, Bungie, Bethesda, and more. And along with his co-founder, Timo, Camille has led the influencer marketing program at Vinted and was part of the team at Navali. Needless to say, we are super excited to welcome you to the show today and can't wait to learn from you. So welcome. It's a treat to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Alyssa.
Can you share the story behind founding Black Soup? What inspired you to start an agency that develops influencer marketing strategies in gaming in particular?
Well, it starts before Black Soup. Timo and I, we met at our previous agency. And back then we were tasked with, so it was an agency that was within gaming, but wasn't focused on influencers at all. And we were tasked with building up a business around influencer marketing. And the reason that sounded appealing to me personally was because I've always been a big YouTube fan. I've watched the very first YouTube channels, the very first YouTube multi-channel networks, followed the business behind the scene, and was always interested in not only the content, but also the statistics, the effectiveness of it, why it was so engaging. And so it sounded like a perfect match between two different passions, which was social media and gaming. I've always been a gamer as well. And so it just, was a match made in heaven back then for a first experience in the gaming industry. And we did this for around 4.5 years. And then Timo and myself founded Black Soup. We're actually turning 5 years old today. We founded on
Wow,
the 4th
congratulations.
of December. Thank you. We need to celebrate more. We wanted to send our employees donuts, but we realized that all of them are remote, live in different places that don't necessarily have delivery services. So next year we need to plan a bit more ahead. So there's a couple of reasons why we left the old agency. It was heading in a different direction. It was an investor-led company, so it had very clear growth ambitions, and those growth ambitions also meant that we had to take on clients that we didn't necessarily feel were a good match, and it was all about basically generating more revenues. The team grew quickly as well, and with the team growing that quickly, we lost a little bit of the culture we had at the very early beginning, and we wanted to find that again with Black Soup. And we also wanted to have a very clear positioning on the market because the other agency was doing both talent and brand agency side of the business. And we felt very strongly about the necessity to separate those. We back then decided to focus clearly on the brand side. So advising brands, in most cases, gaming brands, on how to enter the market, how to work with influencers, what type of content to do.
What was it like getting your first client? You have an impressive roster of companies that you've worked with, but how did you, when you guys first opened the agency, convince people to take that chance on you to manage their campaign?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of cheated because we've been doing this before Black Soup. So obviously we had a network when we started the agency, and that made it definitely significantly easier to start the initial reach out and to at least talk about it and get the conversation going. I think there's so many new agencies popping up everywhere for influencer marketing that it's very difficult if you don't have a network and years of experience to have that kind of entry, unless you have a very special offering or very unique offering. In our case, the network definitely helped. It's been word of mouth since then mostly. It's been just being consistent, having excellent customer service. I think just doing a good work.
Okay, so imagine that I'm a game studio or game publisher and I have a big release coming up. how would you typically work with me, and how would you hire your first influencers for the campaign? How does that work?
The very first step is always just the first conversation, trying to understand what the goals are. And if there are no goals yet, if it's really an explorative conversation, then trying to define those goals together with the client. And I think that's often where campaigns fail nowadays. A lot of people do influencer marketing for the sake of doing influencer marketing, but they don't really question what is the purpose, what's my intent, what do I want to achieve. There's many ways to do influencer marketing. So if you don't have a clear goal, you're not going to choose the right way to work with influencers. Could be obviously driving sales, but trying to be more specific than just driving sales. Could be in specific regions, it could be within a specific target group. So yeah, just try to be as specific as possible when formulating your goals, which will define ultimately the strategy that you choose. Some clients have a very strong preference about how they want to be perceived as a brand, and therefore they also need to be matched with the right creators that match to their brand, right? The initial steps are always very explorative. And once we've done this initial work, which can take a couple weeks, we have that strategy defined, and then we just go out. And I think the very classical steps of influencer marketing would be influencer discovery. So finding the right creators that fit your strategy, all the negotiation, contracting, and communication work that you need to do. So reaching out to those influencers, making them an offer, preparing contracts for them, briefing them. That is often the most tedious part of the job. And then finally, reporting, making sure that we reach our goals, making adjustments based on ongoing reportings, and then also learning from the campaigns that you do. I mean, I've been doing this for roughly 10 years now, but the landscape is changing all the time. So what worked 6 months ago might not work today. And so I think having a very open mind about changing your approach is very important to be successful in this business.
I have so many questions. Okay, so when you're trying, let's say a brand is extremely specific about their brand identity, they're really concerned with brand safety. I imagine that people come in with very specific requirements like, I want to reach the 15 to 25-year-old male demographic in Northern England or something. How do you typically vet them? Is it as simple as just watching a lot of video and kind of making that assessment for yourself? Or are there tools of the trade that you've learned?
Yeah, there are tools. And I think even Twitch and YouTube themselves, they have maturity filters. So that gives you an initial idea. But to be honest, they're not to be trusted. Just because someone streams to an 18 plus audience on Twitch doesn't necessarily mean that they're not brand safe.
Right.
So often we have to go deep into the content, watch the content, try to understand. I mean, there are tools that do sentiment analysis, which are helpful. And there are a couple of methodologies which you can use to at least do an initial filtering. So for example, if we look at a channel and we see that they have a very big dislike ratio. I know that dislikes officially don't exist anymore, but for anybody who still likes to see dislikes, there's a great Google Google Chrome extension that you can use that still shows dislikes based on the user base of this extension. And we always look at what the dislike ratio looks like. If you have 10 videos in a row that all have a 50-50 dislike ratio, that's terrible, and there's probably a reason behind that. So these kinds of things help you do an initial filtering, but I think there's no way to get around the nitty-gritty of actually watching the content, understanding the creator, and making sure that they're actually a brand fit. And then obviously doing some double checks on the past as well. So typically we Google, like when we find a creator that we think is a great fit, we'd still go through a Google search of, hey, was this creator in any controversies over the past couple of years? And yeah, it's tedious work. We haven't found the perfect tool for us yet to kind of solve that.
It does feel like the cost of getting it wrong is a lot higher than the cost of just watching the videos. And especially if your business is word of mouth, it's a lot better off that they feel well taken care of. They got white glove attention, all that kind of stuff.
I think maybe there's also a differentiation to be made between what type of creators you're looking for, because I think there's nowadays you kind of differentiate between, let's say, a launch campaign for a game where you're going to work with hundreds of influencers, and yes, in a way they are going to be affiliated to you, but not as closely as, let's say, an influencer ambassador who you work with closely over several months, who's going to be really the voice of your brand to the community. And so I think you can probably be a bit more loose when vetting on the big launch campaigns where the affiliation is not as strong.
Right.
But when it comes to finding ambassadors, there I think you need to turn every stone and you need to really understand what the creator is all about.
You mentioned before that, the ecosystem changes so quickly, and what each platform requires is changing really rapidly. What is a difference from 6 months ago to today that you've noticed when running campaigns and hiring influencers in gaming?
The platform where we notice it the most as of right now is TikTok when it comes to gaming, because TikTok is probably the one that had biggest growth spike over the past couple of years now.
Totally.
For TikTok, I think every campaign we do is still very much a learn and test campaign where we're still figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and we haven't found the key to success yet. I think TikTok is very hit or miss because of the nature of the platform. One of its biggest advantages that it's so algorithm driven. You can have crazy amounts of success if you have a clip that is picked up by the algorithm.
Yep.
If you don't, you're gonna underperform. And with Twitch and with YouTube, it's more consistent. You can calculate more effectively the performance that you're gonna have. And so with TikTok, I think that's really where we see creators coming up with new content formats, creators from different industries and verticals coming into the space, finding different types of ways to engage with their audience. Yeah, I think that's where we see the most changes. Also, one big point with TikTok is, and that's something we're discovering for ourselves over the past 6 months, is how to combine effectively influencers,
Yeah,
paid
and
influencers
paid.
with paid, exactly. I think
Yep.
that's really one thing. It's in the process of being figured out right now by agencies.
Totally. It's something that we've experimented with a bit here, where you would hire someone to create a video, post it on their owned and operated channels, and then depending on the performance of those videos, then you could gas some of them either as like promote kind of ads, or you can kind of move them over to the Spark ads.
Exactly.
And see if that's good ad creative too. And sometimes it works, but actually sometimes it doesn't translate very well as ads.
Yeah.
And that's that, at least for me, was pretty surprising, but definitely very interesting.
Yeah, I think it also balances out one of the key disadvantages of TikTok because of the volatility of viewership. At least with the added paid media, you can have it a bit more stable and, let's say, reduce the risk of running TikTok campaigns. Obviously, the paid viewership is not going to be as engaged as the organic viewership, but we actually see great performances in some cases still.
I know, for example, that your co-founder doesn't feel like TikTok is maybe as effective as YouTube or Twitch. What's your take on that? Do you feel like there's a place for TikTok in a marketing mix where someone is really performance marketing driven?
I think he has two major doubts about TikTok. One is the volatility we just talked about. So how do we make it consistent and not just a lucky shot every time? And the other one is about the conversion funnel. How do we actually make sure that people we advertise to end up going through our landing page, end up downloading a game, buying a game, etc. And of course, I mean, I'm not going to teach anybody that listens to this podcast this, but with TikTok, you can't just add a link to the description of the clip. You need to go through the bio, and there's just an additional step that makes the conversion funnel longer, and that's going to lead to more drop-offs. And I think that's fair feedback. I think that's definitely also stuff that we struggle with, but I have very concrete reasons to believe that you can still make it work. I think one important thing with TikTok is don't gamble on one piece of content. Make a couple. I think every campaign that we do, and more of our campaigns include some TikTok deliverables as well. I would say we try to include at least around 5 pieces of content on TikTok. And typically we see 1 or 2 perform really well and the other ones not so much. Other thing is it's kind of a sidetrack to this, but we also with Timo have a game development company that we're investors in. And the most success we saw in numbers of wish lists was one TikTok clip that went viral. It brought us more wish lists than Kickstarter, than Steam Next Fest, than all the other stuff that we ran. Just one TikTok clip. Really, you can see the day that it went viral, and you can see the long tail as well. It definitely needs to be part of the marketing mix. To what extent, that's something we need to figure out over the next couple of years.
In your view of like 2023 and like where 2024 is going, what do you see as the biggest trends and opportunities on the horizon that you're kind of looking out for?
I think there's a couple of questions in the influencer marketing space right now that people are already in the process of answering. I think managing creator programs, organic creator programs, is a very big topic. How do we make sure that we can meaningfully engage with creators? And it doesn't, like, some agencies are building standalone tools for it, or some software companies are actually focusing on exactly that issue. But it could also just be a good way to manage creators on Discord, for example. And basically, I think the way that paid influencer marketing has become very successful in a very short amount of time, but then also the effectiveness of it kind of suffered by more and more people going into that market, and the prices started increasing, makes it so that the organic non-paid side of things is becoming more and more important. How do we still manage to have creators cover a game without paying them? What kind of value can we give them that isn't just monetary? And so I think that's one big thing. I think the TikTok thing that we talked about, I also think AI and analytics is a topic. I don't personally see AI when it comes to generating new content. So I don't think that, I mean, I've seen stuff and I've seen creators test around with it, and I've seen AI generated streams even, but I'm personally not engaged with it and convinced by it. I don't think it's going to replace human. I hope it's not going to replace human beings streaming and creating content. But I think that in terms of how to amplify your content, how to analyze your content, there's a lot of opportunities there as well. And then on a maybe more negative side of things, I mean, I briefly touched upon it, but price inflation in the influencer marketing space has been a thing. I mean, since I've been doing this, so it's always been increasing prices over the last 10 years. But I think we reached a spot where I don't think we're very far away from people drawing money away from influencers because of the price increases and putting it back into other marketing channels. Obviously, I'm always talking from a brand agency perspective, from a talent agency perspective, which has been driving those price increases. They have a different opinion about the matter, and they'll tell you about the real value that talents bring. And I don't doubt that. I think it's important to have this conversation and have those two opposite side of things. We want to make our campaigns efficient. We want to make sure that our clients can run ROI positive campaigns, and they want to make sure that the talents that they represent are fairly compensated for the value that they bring.
And I want to dig into the first and the last one. So for the organic creator programs, what does that look like today, and what's like the best example of a creator program like that you've seen that you think like works really well?
The best program that I've seen recently is the one from Supercell. They obviously had a very good starting point, which is they already had an active basis. They already had a lot of creators, but they kind of built a framework around it. They created a lot of content for creators that makes it easier for them to record content about Supercell games, that makes it easier to get information, that helps them kind of on the micro influencer side become an influencer even, or become a creator. But they've also created a platform which rewards creators for just the content that they put out, either by giving them in-game bonuses that they can use, or in-game currency, or even by letting them participate in challenges that they have on their platform. And it's owned, like it's not a general platform that other people can use. It's their own thing that they built. So unfortunately, other clients can't just jump in, but I encourage them to have a conversation with Supercell if they know anybody there. And then, you can create, let's say, missions, and the influencers get points for completing those missions. So let's say, for example, create 5 pieces of content in that week, or create a piece of content on that specific feature. And then you can redeem those points for actual physical items. So you can buy a new microphone, you can buy whatever you want basically. And I thought it was a really good way to engage with a large amount of creators. So I think there's a couple questions you need to answer. The perks, the let's say personas or target audience, which creators do you actually want to onboard? And that can be focused on numbers only. Like you can just say, hey, I want creators that have more than X amount of viewers or followers on those social media platforms. And then I think having people that manage the program, people that actually communicate, that actually answer questions, that actually push out new information to creators. So yeah, you definitely need manpower as well to manage a program like this. But if you compare it to the cost of working with paid influencers, it's not that much money for potentially very big rewards.
And then to your point about the rising costs of hiring influencers, what do you attribute that phenomenon to? Do you think it's just like the maturity of the market?
Influencer marketing, to be fair, has drawn away budgets from a lot of marketing channels in the past couple of years, and I don't see why this trend shouldn't be or couldn't be reversed if influencer marketing becomes too expensive. I mean, in marketing in general, this is how things have been going over the past multiple decades and probably before that. Facebook was super efficient at the start and became less efficient because it became more expensive, Facebook advertising. I think the maturity is the main part. I think it's a natural development. The more successful something is, the more people want to do it. The more expensive it becomes, the less successful it becomes. So that's just a natural development. But I do think that there's a couple of other factors. I think one factor is some brands have completely different ROI than others. And what might have a positive ROI for one brand will not for the other, just because their product is not as successful or because their product has simply less potential. And so what I see when it comes to the gaming space, for example, is we see companies entering the space that want to advertise to a gaming audience, but with a completely different business model. And their business model and their products might be great. Their business model is highly successful. So I've seen this with food delivery companies or with like ready-made boxes, basically.
Yeah.
And they're willing to pay a certain price because they know that it's still going to be successful for them. But their willingness to increase their rates also increases the general rates on the market and what creators are expecting to be paid for something.
Right.
And so I think that becomes more difficult when it comes to gaming products, which might sometimes just not be as profitable. Or have a harder time being profitable. Obviously, you can always, in terms of negotiation, you can always talk about how naturally a product fits into a certain content, and then there's no fixed prices when it comes to influencer marketing. Typically, everything's negotiable, and you can make arguments for everything, but it's been tougher and tougher. And then I think the other aspect, besides non-endemic brands with different ROI models entering the space, is also the limited supply. And I think that's even stronger outside of the English-speaking creator space. Because when it comes to English-speaking creators, it's the biggest group of creators we have out there. So there's quite a lot of supply of creators. And so if one creator doesn't want to do it with you for a certain price, you have alternatives. But in some markets, so we do a lot in Europe as well, not only in North America. And so in some European markets, we see that the supply of creators is so limited and you end up going always to the same creators when it comes to a specific niche, unless you're ready to compromise on fit,
right?
Which typically we're not, that they are in a much better negotiation position because you simply don't have any alternatives. And so that drives the prices up as well. And to be fair, who am I to say what a fair price is and what is not? I see that it's been increasing, and I see it's been getting tougher and tougher to run successful campaigns. But at the end of the day, the market dictates what prices should be out there. And the prices right now definitely, in a way, justified by the market conditions.
What do you feel like is an unpopular opinion that you hold that maybe other people in your exact position, like, they aren't sold on yet?
The price is definitely something that I've had the most fights about, because as soon as you talk to a talent agency, they're gonna consider it from a completely different angle, which again is fair. There's definitely two opinions about this one, and it's about how to scale influencer marketing. I personally don't believe in an influencer marketing platform that's going to automatically run influencer campaigns, where you can just, automatically, even semi-automatically, in the sense that you can just go on a platform, say, I want to book those 5 creators, and then they're booked and it's done. I think if you want to run efficient campaigns, if you want to avoid fraud, if you want to make sure that people are engaged, if you want to create good conversion funnels and have good sales, there's a lot of tasks involved in running campaigns that currently can't be well automated, in my opinion. There's plenty of tasks that can be automated. So I think when it comes to reporting, contracting, influencer discovery, tools and platforms can really be helpful. But at the end of the day, we're talking to human beings which are all different from each other, and it's a highly creative space. So it's people that have very clear visions of what type of content they want to do and how they want to do it. So it needs to be highly individualized. But yeah, I mean, and I say this also from a perspective of having at our previous agency tested the marketplace approach and just seeing what kind of issues come with it. And I mean, I've seen other companies fail at it. There's a lot of potential for automation, but I don't think human beings negotiating, talking to creators, understanding the problematics that creators face, the problematics that clients face, is going to be replaced by AI anytime soon.
What advice, if any, would you have for an agent or a marketer hoping to work with influencers?
I think watch content is the advice I would give. Like, try to understand why creators are being successful, what value you get out of it from an audience perspective. Try to get a feel for what different types of creators there are as well, and what type of creators could work well for you. Before you run a campaign, think about the goals. What are you trying to achieve? Don't do it because your competitor is doing it. Do it because you think it's going to help you to achieve certain goals that you have, and have a clear testing framework. As I said, the landscape changes all the time. So even us, after doing this for 10 years, we keep doing basically only testing campaigns. I mean, obviously we have a certain methodology. We know that certain things work, but we never think that there's only one way to do things and we have the right way and that's it. We always question ourselves. Whenever something doesn't go according to plan, we look at it, but even if it goes according to plan, we look at it and we try to understand, okay, why was it particularly successful or why was it not? The work that we did at Vinted with Timo really helped because they were so data oriented that we tried to quantify everything. So we tried to quantify content as well, try to understand, okay, what different types of content are there? Let's try different types of content in an A/B testing format. And so, yeah, I think just testing things, learnings, improving, and no running blind campaigns in the same format every time. I just don't think that works for influencer marketing.
For testing, what is the optimal test? Because I feel like with influencer marketing, it's also a little bit tough because there's so many different variables. You don't know why it didn't work. If it was the same content in a different platform, or like that creator just had a bad day, or like actually it's this whole segment, like maybe a just chatting format versus a gameplay format, like it could be different for you.
I agree with you. That's the biggest challenge, right? There's so many different variables to consider that it's very difficult to have an effective testing framework. And content matters so much, but besides content, every audience is different as well. So what might have worked with one audience is maybe not going to work with another audience. And so you're right. It's very difficult. It's more about recognizing correlations. So recognizing, okay, if I actually do a call to action including this specific talking point, then I see in general more effectiveness than if I do it differently. And so having those kinds of correlations that allow you to improve your briefing, improve your approach, improve the selection of creators that you do, that's what it's all about, in my opinion. It's not about finding the perfect solution, because I think it's too complex of a marketing tool for that to exist.
What are the differences for you based on your experience at Vinted, which is non-gaming, versus running, influencer campaigns in gaming?
I mean, there were definitely a lot of differences, but it's difficult for me because my knowledge in the secondhand fashion space, which is Vinted, is much more limited. It's difficult to generalize to know, did a thing that I experienced was a thing that I experienced like this because of Vinted, or was it because that's a general
Right.
industry thing? But just to talk about my experience with Vinted, the data orientation was crazy. In general, any product that you sell directly on a website or platform that you own is
Yep.
gonna have a much more data-oriented approach because you can measure everything. When it comes to games, we are dependent on big distribution platforms, Steam, PlayStation, Xbox, which don't share the same amount of data, which are to a certain extent a black box. And so it makes it difficult to have the same amount of measurability. But what I also noticed is because of that measurability, we were able to very effectively measure the organic uplift we had. So how many people that we address are actually going to go through a link to download something or to play something or to buy something versus how many people are going to organically go to the website, go to the tool, not follow a link. So people that we can't track basically and get something. And with Vinted, because the way we work with those collaborations is we would typically create stores for creators, or the creators would create stores where they would sell some of their items. And so we would be able to track how many people actually created an account, went to the profile of the creator, looked it up, versus how many people do we have that followed the link and created an account. And we saw that there was a ratio of 4-1. So for each person that we brought in that came through the link, we had 4 people that didn't come through the link that still signed up. And so this kind of information, understanding that even if you have a nice tracking link somewhere, even if you have a very clear call to action, you'll still have a portion of the results that you won't be able to measure unless you run tests in very specific conditions, how we did it at Vinted.
Right.
Those kind of tests are always very difficult to do in gaming just because they're typically launch campaigns where all the marketing effort is put to one specific spot in 1 month, and so you can't really differentiate the organic uplift from where did the people come from. Did they come from the influencer campaign? Did they come from the the event that I ran, etc., etc.?
If you had to give any advice to influencers that might want to work with a company like yours, or might want to get picked up for a brand deal and run a successful campaign and get chosen again, what kind of advice would you give them?
From a personal experience, the first way we fail at working with creators is because either they don't have a contact to reach out to, or because they don't respond to their general email. So the very first step is put your email out there, put an inbox out there, and if you don't want to manage it yourself, find the talent agency. There's plenty out there that is willing to manage it for you and kind of give you the summary of what's interesting and what's not. Because I can understand that it's overwhelming when you get 20, 40 requests in a single day and 95% of those are super uninteresting. So that's what talent agencies are out there for as well, to filter the ones that are interesting. So yeah, first, find a good way for people to get in touch with you. When it comes to brand safety, some brands are more restrictive than others. And there, I think it's a personal choice to make. Do you want to restrict yourself and your content in order to become more appealing to certain advertisers or brands or not? It's often not really a good choice, because if it makes you less authentic, if you can keep your authenticity while being brand safe, sure, it's always better. But yeah, if not being brand safe in the classic sense of the term is part of your brand and part of who you are, then so be it.
Then
I think, you just need to accept that some brands are not going to want to work with you. I think maybe in terms of repeat activations, what we look out for in creators to work again with is professionalism, reliability, speed of communication, and obviously that's part of kind of any partner that you work with, or you would expect it from any partner that you work with. But it's definitely, when it comes to influencers, something that is often lacking, and it's definitely the Wild West when it comes to working with influencers often, and we always appreciate someone that we can rely on. And then maybe one last little more out of the box idea. I think creators that go maybe beyond just playing the game, doing the promotion, and then sending the invoice, but creators that maybe give you proactive input on,
Yeah,
hey, this game was great, but I feel like if they had did, done this in a different way, it would have had even more success. And then that's kind of the messages we can relay to the clients and be like, hey, look, this creator actually cares. Like, he actually took time to give you feedback. That wasn't something that he had to do.
totally.
Those kinds of little gestures, I think, often leave a good memory of someone. And then even if we try to involve anyone that we think is relevant, we're always going to think about those people first that actually were good to work with.
Last question.
Mhm.
Is there anything else that you feel like I didn't touch on or that you want to talk about that we didn't get to?
One question that I thought was interesting was about the market consolidation. I think it's part of the maturity of the market as well, but it's definitely interesting what kind of impact it will have on the market long term. And it definitely made me think, in the short term, it's probably beneficial in the sense that there's a lot of bad apples in the influencer marketing space. It's easy to enter. If you want to run an agency, unless you have crazy platform plans or tech plans, it doesn't cost much.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are trying it. And some of those people are unprofessional, unreliable, not honest, not transparent. And the consolidation of the market and the tougher market conditions definitely make it so that those companies typically die first.
Right.
So that's, I guess, a positive short-term development. In the long run, what I'm scared about is there being a lack of choice for brands and for creators. So both on the talent agency side and on the brand agency side, we consider us as, like, I hate the word, but boutique agency. So we
Sure.
consider ourselves small, experts, strive for excellency. For other companies, they might not, but they might still be perceived as a better choice when it comes to scaling campaigns. And I see this in practice already now. We've lost some pitches in the past where the only reason, at least the only reason the client gave us of why we lost the pitch, is because the other agency felt like a safer choice in the sense that they were bigger. They had, I guess they had more employees that they could lean on. They had maybe more case studies because they were bigger. I don't think you need 50 people, 100 people to run a campaign.
Right.
Typically, you need 3, 4 excellent people that know what they're doing, that have a clear strategy, and that communicate with each other, and they can run a campaign of any size, is my opinion.
There's consolidation on both the game developer and publisher side and then also on the agency side. Thank you for tuning into Influence. It was incredible having Camille with us today. Remember, with every episode, we bring you the minds and voices leading the charge in the influencer marketing world, helping you stay ahead in this rapidly changing landscape. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode. And follow us on social media at PowderGG on Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube for more updates and behind-the-scenes content. And check out Black Soup on everywhere where they are present. And you can find Camille.
Thank you so much.